How's it going, everybody? Graydon here with Last Pack Magic. Today we're going to do a podcast, Ep.1, about grading cards in the Marvel world. We have a special guest today to help walk us through the process of grading and the importance of grading in the Marvel world. And without further ado, we'll bring him on. I'd like to introduce Michael Salter.
Hey, Graydon.
How's it going?
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming. This is Ep.1 of a podcast I've been wanting to do for a little while, and you're the perfect guest to have on to talk about today's topic.
Dude, I seriously, I don't just say this just to say this. I appreciate you thinking of me as being the first guest on your podcast. That's super cool. Thank you, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's there's today's topic is grading, and you are in the community the person that comes to mind when you think about grading. In my opinion, I don't know if you agree with that.
Sometimes, I don't know. I'm always searching for people out there that are grading tens of thousands of Marvel cards. And I think on social media, I may be up there, but I think there's collectors out there that aren't on social media that are kind of hidden, So.
It's interesting in this hobby how you never know who's out there. You might not be the biggest shark,
It's true. It's so true.
You never. And I love that about the mystery of all this.
Yeah, for sure.
A couple of questions just out of the gate for you. Is every card in your personal collection, is it graded?
Yes.
Every card. If we had to guess a number of cards, could we give a ballpark?
I've got 3,000 on eBay that are graded, that are all Marvel cards. Yep. Some of those, maybe 5% are PC. The rest, I'm just looking to sell or trade. And then I've got, I don't know the exact number. If I had to guess, probably another 4,000 in my PC that are not on eBay, that are all graded.
Why don't we talk quickly about your PC? I know there are people that are very familiar with you on social media and on your Instagram, Cool Cards, and your YouTube channel, Cool Cards. If you're not following those, I highly recommend you like and subscribe to those. There will be a lot of stuff on there, a lot of really good info. But who do you collect? Give us the range of who you collect.
So Wolverine character collector, that's my number one go-to for sure. And then in terms of character collecting, after Wolverine, it goes to Batman. And then after Batman, it's not really any particular order. 2 or 3 more. Venom, Deadpool, Ghost Rider, Silver Surfer's up there. Spider-Man's up there. Yeah.
Nice.
But Wolverine's the main one. And then sets from the 90s, all graded. Insert sets and base sets. That's the focus.
And so how are you making out with your fully gem minted series of 96 masterpieces? I know that was a goal of yours for a while.
Yeah, no, I think I'm 80, 90% there.
Amazing.
And it's so fun because there's so many cards in that set that either no gem mints exist with any company or maybe 1 or 2,
Right.
So it's a little more challenging, but fun,
No kidding.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in with the grading companies in grading DC versus Marvel?
What do you mean difference?
So is there a price difference, or is there any complications that arise or is Marvel harder to get graded than DC quality control wise, or?
No, I haven't seen that. It just goes back to the card stock and how they were made, depending whether it's DC or Marvel or whatever the brand is.
Great.
Yeah.
So for people who it's their very first week in the Marvel hobby, what is card grading?
So if you're brand new and you're just getting into this, card grading allows you to own or purchase a card for $1 or $5 or $10 or a quarter, right?
Yeah.
And then if it's in the right condition, you get it graded. And if it grades, it could turn into $100 or $5,000. I graded a $1 Hulk insert card a couple of years ago. It got a Beckett Black Label 10, and I sold that Hulk dollar card for $7,000. And that's an extreme example. I don't want people watching your show to think that they can do that constantly, but that's
Right.
just an extreme example of what grading can do for a card,
And so when you say that it got a gem mint 10, so what you're saying is that somebody at a grading company looked over that card and said, this card is perfectly centered. There's no damage to this card. I'll let you explain.
Yeah. To break it down. So grading, first off, means it can turn your collection into hundreds or thousands of dollars. That's the exciting part to me, right? but to get down to the nuts and bolts of it, yeah, they grade on centering, surface, edges, and corners, and they assign each grade. And then and different grading companies use different determining factors after they look at the surface, the edges, the corners, and grading. So for example, BGS uses a logarithm. If your 4 subgrades are a 10, 10, 10, 8, they're going to assign the most weight and importance to the 8, to the lowest grade, because it's the biggest distraction on the card. So 10, 10, 10, 8 might yield you a 9 or an 8.5. Yeah. So it's not an average. Yeah.
And those statistics that you were just mentioning are found on the label of the card. They show you each one of those 4 points, correct?
With Beckett, they do. With other companies, they don't. Yeah.
Okay. What entitles a card? What makes a card eligible to be graded? Is it a copyright thing? What type of copyright information needs to be on a card to be eligible?
That's an awesome question. If it's something you can buy that is from a mainstream company like Upper Deck or Topps or something like that, they're all going to have, like you're saying, the copyright, the year on all that. They'll grade all of those. But sometimes you get cards that are delivered or distributed at like San Diego Comic-Con, or they're just off mainstream spots, right? Mm-hmm. And if on those cards they put a copyright on there and they say copyright Marvel, typically the grading company can verify that it actually is something that they would grade. And a lot of, like for Beckett, with Beckett, man, they will not grade a card sometimes, even with a copyright, if it's not in their database. And so if you're a really passionate collector and a little crazy like me, I'll email Beckett, and I've done this thousands and thousands of times, and I'll say, hey, here's a crazy weird set from Venezuela, right? Or wherever, right? China. Here's the copyright. Please add this to your online price guide. Put this in your database, please. I'd love to get it graded. Most of the time they'll do that. And if they do that, you're in. They'll grade it. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. So I guess let's use that as a segue into the next part of the conversation. There are a number of grading companies out there. And so you've mentioned Beckett. So I'm assuming that is your choice for your entire collection?
That's for my PC, the ones that I like to keep. It's Beckett. Yep.
Right. Why Beckett?
Well, whenever I was deciding what company to use, it was early 2000s when I started to get into grading pretty heavily. And I looked at the cases and I just fell in love with aesthetically how Beckett looked compared to other companies. I loved that I knew why they gave the grade right with the subgrades. And I didn't want to send off a card that I thought was a 10 and it'd come back an 8 and not have a clue why. So I didn't like that, And then with Beckett, it's got the pristine 10 possibility, and then it's got the black label 10 possibility. And so with those two different possibilities on cards, that's a whole nother level of income. But I didn't do this for from the early 2000s until 2018. I didn't do any of this to make money. I did it all for me to collect, trade with my friends, stuff like that. But the last few years, it turned into a business with collecting. So now I do it for both reasons, right?
Right.
And I just, now it used to be the excitement of holding a pristine 10 or black label with Beckett. It was just so rare, but now it's like, okay, I got a black label or I got a pristine 10. This might be worth selling. And
amazing. Every answer you give leads to me having 3 more questions about it.
Yeah.
So, but while it's fresh in my mind here, first of all, since you do have a business involving grading cards, if people are interested in finding you, where's the best place to find your graded cards for sale? So
I have a website, coolcards.net. It's going to be completed by middle of this year. When I say completed, it's there and it's complete, but I only have a fraction of my cards in there. My goal with that site is to put the rarest, most exclusive Marvel cards and DC cards on the planet on that website. That just something that's really never been done before. And that's the goal with the website. But for the general public right now, I'd say eBay is your best bet. Cool Card Life is my username. But if you type in Marvel BGS 95 on eBay, I'd say 98% of the ones that come up are probably mine, right? So
great. Well, I'm glad that I'll include links for where to find both of those.
Cool.
And as mentioned, you're on YouTube as well as Cool Cards.
Yep.
So when you just mentioned the Beckett, the 2 distinct labels of a Gem Mint 10 and a Black Label 10,
it's a pristine 10 in a pristine black label 10. So when you say gem mint, the Beckett has a 9.5 gem mint designation for gem mint.
Could you explain the difference between the two 10s?
Yeah. So a black label 10 is the highest attainable grade with any grading company on the planet that you can get, meaning every attribute of the card is literally in pristine condition. There's not a single flaw. You put it under a microscope, you probably won't see a flaw at all anywhere on that card. Yeah, that's a black label. A pristine 10, every pristine 10 has the same subgrades, meaning they're all 0.5 from black label. So pristine 10 is 10, 10, 10, 9, 5, or 9, 5, 10, 10, 10. It's typically got 3 10s and a 9, 5. And it's so that one subgrade is a gem mint subgrade instead of pristine 10.
Okay, gotcha. When these cards are being graded, are they grading both sides of the card, or is it just the face?
Both sides for sure. But they don't, most grading companies won't count the back of the card as much as the front, meaning if the centering is off 60-40 on the back, and the centering is if the centering is 50-50 on the front, but the back it's off 60-40, they might give you mint to gem mint overall on centering.
Right. Okay.
But if the front has 60-40 centering and the back is 50-50, they're not going to give you a gem mint on centering because the front has more weight when it comes to the overall card.
I got you. The emphasis on the face.
It is. Yeah.
I guess this will lead us into talking about, so with Beckett having a 9.5, considering a gem mint, how is it that, how does that compare to a PSA 10? I understand that this might be an opinion-based question, so feel free to give it as an opinion. This doesn't have to be a fact, but maybe shed some light on something like that. And not to pick on PSA, any of the other ones, CGC, 10, whatever.
Yeah, well, great. I just released a video on my YouTube channel that talks about the differences. I mean, I did this yesterday. I literally just did this yesterday.
Really?
Yeah. And it's the differences between Beckett and PSA, and the main thing that. Repeat your question. I want to make sure I answered it exactly how you asked.
I'll word it this way. How does a PSA 10 compare to how Beckett is grading? So if I cracked open a PSA 10 slab, like the Sabertooth gift I got, which is a 10, and I sent that off to Beckett, would that come back as a 10, or would that come back as a lower number and that be the norm?
All right. I don't want anything. I want to repeat what you just said, because I don't want any viewers to think that I am knocking PSA, because I'm not.
This is an opinion. Yeah. This is an opinion. This is all.
It is.
None of this is
all opinion. Yep. I use PSA strategically to flip cards. So I've cracked open thousands of PSA 10s.
Yeah.
Because my goal is to convert that PSA 10 to a Beckett 9.5 or higher. Okay.
Yeah.
Half or more of those PSA 10s don't qualify as a 9.5 or higher with Beckett.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed with my own experience is handling thousands of PSA 10s, and inside that PSA 10, if you shake it, a lot of times you hear the clicking, the card's moving, right?
Absolutely.
If that card's shipped all over the country, or it's exchanged hands and it's mailed here and there over and over and over and over again, it's gonna create damage where the PSA holder touches the sides of the card. Sometimes you can see divots that were created, right? And that happens so often, which makes the card no longer that condition. The label's the same, the condition's the same, not the same, right? And,
I understand, yeah.
And also, I don't know what the reason behind this is, but I've seen a lot of PSA 10s that haven't moved in the case. They don't have that damage, but they may have huge, significant flaws that PSA just missed, or whatever the reason is. And so from what I can tell, typically, and this is obviously, like we're saying, this is all opinionated, but this is
nobody takes to heart.
Yeah. And this is me going off of what I've done in my life. This is not me looking at or talking to anybody. This is what I've handled myself after handling tens of thousands of graded cards. I've noticed Beckett 9.5s are just more consistent. If I'm looking at the inside of the card inside the Beckett 9.5 case, 99% of the time it's representative of the grade. Sometimes they miss stuff. I think all grading companies miss stuff sometimes.
It's a human that's doing it.
Yeah. So that's normal. But with PSA 10s, man, it's frustrating, because I really, really want and hope every time I get a PSA 10 to convert it to a Beckett 9.5 or higher. And like I said, I don't have the exact percentage, but ballpark half just don't convert. because of the condition.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
In the past, I've heard you mention in some of your other episodes I've seen you in that you have assisted some of these grading companies with grading with which cards can be graded in Marvel. Can you elaborate a little bit more about how you've kind of been a part of that process?
Sure. There were so many cards coming out that Beckett and PSA and all these companies don't have in their database sometimes. Like this is like a deck, like a deck of Marvel cards, right? That's a good example. There's just random, authentic, real, cards out there that just aren't the mainstream upper deck cards that these companies don't have in their database. So I personally, since I've had a goal, forever to have every Wolverine card graded, so I find these cards, right? eBay or in the wild or trading, and
in the wild.
Right. Just somewhere. And then, and they won't, and they won't be in their database. And so I'll email like Beckett, for example, and say, hey, can you please add this set to your database? And then
is it as simple as that? You just have to mention to them that it exists and they do that? Or do you have to provide any kind of documentation?
Good question. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Sometimes they ask me, we can't find, like a good question Beckett will ask me, they'll say, we can't find this list of characters anywhere. Can you, and this actually just happened with this set. This set, I couldn't find anywhere online a list of all the characters. And so what I did, I watched a YouTube video of somebody opening this, because I haven't opened this yet.
What's that, Michael?
What is it?
What set is that?
Magic of Marvel Oracle deck.
Wow, I've never heard of it.
You're right. It's kind of random, right? I mean, all original art, super different, super unique. And sometimes I'll have to say, okay, here's a list of all the characters, or I'll give them little clues of where to find it, or I'll say, check out this website. This has everything you need to know on it. And we kind of work together. But usually it's just a couple of emails and they get it right. So
when you send in a card, you send in a Wolverine card, and they send it back to you, and the slab says Deadpool on it. Clearly an error in labeling. What happens then?
They fix it for free.
They fix it for free.
Every time. Yep.
So there's been some issues recently in comics. I'm sure that people are aware of what's been going on. I don't want to get into that, and I don't want to name anything. But I've looked at these card slabs from different grading companies. They seem very secure. Not to make a loaded question, but it would be like you've opened a lot of these, like you said. It's difficult, I imagine,
to open the
crack a slab.
Yeah, it can be. If you don't have the right technique, it can be extremely difficult. If you have the right tools and you practice on maybe some cheap cards first, I don't think it's a big deal. But yeah, when I started it was a pain in the butt. It really was.
Have you ruined some cards taking them out of slabs before? You don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
I don't mind at all answering that. Out of, I don't know, thousands and thousands of cracking, I feel like I've ruined 2 or 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I have for sure. I cracked a Jordan rookie. I mean, I've cracked Kobe Bryant refractor 9.5. I mean, so many random, crazy high-end cards. And thank God I didn't mess up those. The ones I messed up, probably $50 or less. Yeah. So,
as maybe you could just share with us really quickly, someone who's opened as many boxes as you, I can guarantee you've done this, because I've opened up like 10 boxes and I've done it. What was the last card you dropped and were like, I was going to grade it and now I'm not?
Oh man, it was a Kingpin 1990 Marvel Universe PSA 10 that I cracked out of the PSA 10 case, was grading the Kingpin, pre-grading it, making sure it looks as good as I thought it did in the PSA 10 case. Dropped it, ding in the corner. Oh well, it's gone.
It's bound to happen. It's just we're humans, right? These hands.
I've dropped 2 or 3 cards last year. Yeah. So it happens. It does.
Those are good number for percentages. I'm going to say you're in the high percentage range. I think you're still good.
I like to think that I am. I still hate doing it, but yeah.
So let's. You're known in the community for somebody who has a lot of sealed wax, and you open a lot of boxes. Why don't you talk to us about the amount of gem mints that come out of a box that you open? I know that's a really broad question, but let's use your 1996 masterpiece set that you opened around Christmas time there. Why don't you mention how that turned out grading wise?
Yeah. So on my YouTube channel, my goal is to have I don't know, 100+ videos of me opening up a particular box, pre-grading every card of the box, sending those cards off to get graded, and then documenting how many gemmed from that box. Because I think that if collectors had information like that to know approximately how many gems they're going to get from a box, that could be huge. That could be very helpful. So what you're talking about, the 1996 Marvel Masterpieces, I've done 2 boxes on YouTube over the last year and a half, and they both have yielded approximately 50 gem mints each. At one time, when the market was up there, that would have been a $30,000 to $50,000 profit from one box. It's not that high now, but
right.
at one
and
time,
we're just making the assumption it all sold.
yes, exactly, exactly.
Right. Just for in general.
Yep. In my third box, I've got all those. I did a third box. Those are all in a stack. I'm going through them now. They're literally, I just opened it up a few weeks ago. I'm trying to finish pre-grading it. Then we'll have 3 boxes of 96 masterpieces, all documented, to know how many. And if you got 3 boxes and they're all about the same, it's no guarantee that every box will be like that forever, but at least it'll be something to go off of. It could help,
So much of my Marvel hobby is enjoyed vicariously through you.
Oh, nice. Good.
You open, it's great that you're sharing box breaks with people. It's for people that aren't going to open up these boxes, whether it be for rarity, difficult to find, or price. It's great to still get to experience them with you. Your openings are amazing. They're so much fun.
Thank you, man. And I want to add this too, Graydon. If you're a collector out there, or if you're an investor or both, and you really want to make some money, if you will do the legwork and maybe spend an hour on PSA's and Beckett's Pop Report, and you pick certain years, and let's say you pick 2009 Spider-Man Archives, okay? And you see a lot of PSA 10s come out of that. You see some Beckett Pristine 10s out of that. That can kind of, I would say most of the time, give you the thought of, wow, if I get an 09 Spider-Man Archives box, I'm probably going to get a lot of gems out of it. So if you do your homework and see, where the pop reports are at, that can also give you an indication of what boxes you can get a lot of gems out of.
Well, like I mentioned, every answer you give, I have 3 more questions. So before I forget them, let's go into them really quickly. Could you mention to the public what pre-grading is and how you do it?
Absolutely. So pre-grading starts with you holding the card in your hands, and you buy it's over there, a magnifying glass with a light, $50, $80 on Amazon. Yeah. And you look at the card, you're looking at all the attributes. You're trying to get an understanding of the grade you think it's going to be.
Is it worth submitting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you're trying to determine if it's worth spending the money to have it graded.
Exactly. That's the thought process. Do I want to spend my $15 to $20 and send this card off? And if you got 50 cards or 100 cards or 300 cards, 15 to 20 bucks adds up, obviously, So you can save yourself a lot of money if you really pre-grade it and determine that. And you can look at other graded cards on eBay. Sometimes there's really nice scans you see front and back to kind of give you a general idea of the condition of that card.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think there's a lot of people that are wondering, do I submit my entire box if you're a person who's into grading, or do you go through them and look through what you think is going to grade highest?
Yeah, I'll go through all the cards in the box that I want to get graded. Sometimes it's every card in the box I'll pre-grade. Sometimes it's just the heavy hitters, the ones I like. Yeah. But yeah, I have done that the wrong way years ago and sent off cards. I'm like, this is probably an 8, but I'll gamble it. Maybe they'll get it wrong. Nope. It's just a waste of money. So yeah.
Maybe we could segue this into talking about the price of grading a card. And then also, I know that there are different tiers. I've never graded a card. So the reason I'm asking isn't only for the community's information. I'm also getting a lot of information out of this. So when you submit a card, there are different tiers of grading as far as value goes, and there's a cost associated with both, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Could you touch on that for us?
Yeah. I mean, with all grading companies, just about, you got different service levels where you can pay more money and they'll do it faster and send it back to you quicker. And then you got the cheapest service level, which will take any grading company 1 to 6 months to get it back to you, depending on their workload, time of year, and all that good stuff. And so if you're looking to do this to keep the card, always go with the lowest service level. No reason to throw away money. You know, we can wait a few months, but if you've got a card that you pulled or you got and you're thinking it can bring significant money in the current market, if it had that grade, you don't want to miss the market. If it's worth, if your card's worth $5,000 as a 10 or a Beckett 9.5 or a PSA 10, and you can spend 150, 200 bucks and have that card returned to you in a week or two, do it. I would recommend do it, because if you wait that 4, 5, 6 months, it could be worth 2,000 then, or it could, you know, it might still be worth the same, but I wouldn't risk it. If you got something high end, I would jump on the highest service level. I think that's how I personally look at it. That doesn't mean how everybody should look at it. That's how I look at it. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering all this. I have so many questions just out of general curiosity, and
sure.
As people roll through this, they'll have questions that hopefully we get to covering. You've talked about 96 masterpieces and other sets from the 90s that you've graded. They're on 35-point cards, correct?
Yes.
So with newer modern sets, the card stock is 80 point, 100 point, and so on, and larger.
Right.
How do the two compare in the difficulty of achieving a higher grade?
Yeah, the thicker the card, typically the harder it is going to find getting a good grade on it. But when you find a thick card that gems, it's so satisfying, because you know it may be a while before someone else has one, and you kind of completed. It's like if you're doing this to collect and build sets that are graded, or character collect and build, and you receive that one that's like, you've seen all of them are crap, all of them are bad condition, all the thick cards you've seen are just terrible, and you find one, you're like, oh, this one's thick, but it looks nice, and it grades. That's a really good feeling, you know?
So other than it just being very satisfying to achieve a high grade, there's something called a pop report for all of these. Could you touch on what a pop report is and how people can find those numbers?
Yes. So not just having a great feeling from a high grade from a thick card, but also the rarity of it. So everybody's familiar with cards that are serial numbered. I think everybody's heard that or seen that. And that brings rarity to a card. If it's serial numbered 1 of 1, it's rare, whatever, right? But if you have a card that's thick, or a card that doesn't typically grade well, and it gets a Gem Mint 9.5 or a Gem Mint 10 or high grade, you can go to PSA's website or Beckett's website or both, and you can look on their website for a population report. You type in that set and year, and it'll tell you how many grades that company has assigned that exact card since that card came out or that company started grading. And if you find this is Midnight Suns, a brand new card that just came out, Midnight Suns. This is what you're talking about, a 30 thicker card, right?
Yeah, 80 point, 100 point, yeah.
Right. And so if when in the next year, people are going to start sending these in, and you're going to see pop reports, and pop reports change every time they grade a card. When they grade a card, when this card gets encapsulated with its own serial number, whether it's PSA or Beckett or whatever company it's with, they then put that card in their system. So if it gets a Beckett 9, then that pop report will say 1 if it's the first time. If there was 10 Beckett 9s and this gets a 9, it'll be 11. So
this is something I've put a little bit of thought into over pop reports. I find it really interesting. First and foremost, there isn't a general pop report. It's company specific, correct?
True. Yep.
So when people are sending in more and more cards, there is a potential for the pop report to go drastically up, provided they gem higher, right?
Yes, but I would say that only happens over a long period of time.
And so my segue to this, though, if people are sending in more and more cards and the pop report for 8s becomes very high, does that affect the price of a 9.5? I'll just repeat it in case there's any mistake there. If people are sending in a ton of cards and they're grading lower than expected, does that make the 9.5s worth more?
I would say that it does, but not to everybody. It only does to the people that understand what that means.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So in other words, answer your question is yes. Yes.
Grading seems to me to be a bit of a hobby inside of the hobby.
It's true. You're absolutely right. It absolutely is. Yeah.
And I mean that in like the most respectful of ways. Like I think that grading is like, if you're into Marvel cards, that's like a level, or you're into, like, I'm into Wildstorm as well. Like if you're into the card collecting hobby, that's one thing. But then there's character collecting and set collecting. And then another tier of it is into graded cards and raw cards, raw being ungraded. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thought process behind that is, if you're into pop reports and grading and you see that the 8s and 9s are climbing, and after a year or two, there's a lot more 8s and 9s, right?
Yeah.
But the 10s haven't been climbing that much. A good example of this is 1996 Marvel Masterpieces Psylocke. Okay.
Yeah.
Her 7s, 8s, and 9s go up monthly or every few months or every 6 months or whatever. But her gem mints, they stay low. She's got 1 or 2 PSA 10s, 1 or 2 gem mint 9.5s in Beckett, something like that.
So it seems to me that if a card's going to achieve a high grade, it's going from pack pulled to a very safe environment to grading. Am I correct in saying that?
You are. You take me back to my days before I started doing this to make money. And I used to buy raw cards on eBay all the time, but I would communicate with the seller. I would say, hey, can you send me better pictures? Or can I see a picture of the back? And I would phrase it very carefully, so I didn't get a response from them. I was trying to avoid a seller saying, I'm not a grader. I don't know the grade. You know, I'm trying to avoid that.
Trying to opt out of answering your question.
Yeah, I don't want that. So I had to rephrase my questioning to all these eBay sellers, and I found a lot of gems this way. And I would say, hey, what flaws do you notice, if any at all?
Right.
Just simple question, right? And that really, just that communication with the seller and talking, I got some gems from there. But overall speaking, you are going to be better off if you're looking for gems to get it pack pulled for sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I know that. So personally, I don't. I have one graded card, and it's one that somebody sent me. I seem to have an opinion about graded cards. That's what I want to lead into here. Is that I'm confused why somebody would want to grade a 1-of-1 card. So are there cards that you think shouldn't be graded, like printing plates, or are you grade them across the board? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that it really comes down to what the individual person's goal is. And what I say by that, my goal is I personally get a lot of satisfaction about my graded cards having serial number, being in order on the registry. The registry is amazing. We'll probably get into that, before we finish this, but the registry is huge. It satisfies all of your organizational visual needs in terms of your collection. They're beautifully displayed, all in order. It shows you how you're competing against everybody else in the world that puts their cards there.
Let's talk about that now and come back to this.
Let's go back to that because I want to hear all
about this.
Perfect.
Keep going, please.
Okay. Yeah, we'll get back to that. Definitely.
Yeah.
The registry is huge. Right. So what were we saying? I lost my train of thought.
Let's talk about the registry. No, let's continue on with the registry, and we're going to come back to about grading 1-of-1s.
Perfect. Because perfect.
Let us know all about the registry, please.
Okay. So Nat Turner is the CEO of PSA, and I read in a magazine, and he quoted that the registry of PSA is the lifeblood of their company. That's kind of important, I would say. Okay. So the registry. And Beckett has a registry. PSA's, I like Beckett better for a million reasons I didn't even talk about, but I like PSA's registry better than Beckett's. And I like PSA's QR code better than Beckett not having, but anyway, the registry, man, is incredible because when you put your cards in a registry, sometimes your competitive juices start to flow and you're like, oh, wow, I've got, the 4th largest collection in the world on the registry. This is so cool. Maybe if I just buy a few more, I can move up to number 3 and number 2 and number 1 in the world, right?
So are you labeled as the collector in there, or are you just keeping track of your cards on that registry?
What do you mean?
Is it attached to, when you go on the registry and you have the QR code, is it associated with the Cool Cards collection, or is it just a general reference number?
So I don't have any cards on the registry with PSA because I just sell my PSAs. I don't keep them. But with Beckett, all the serial numbered cards I own are all in that registry, and they're publicly displayed against all other registries in the world on Beckett's site.
Okay, very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
It seems to me, and I think to every single person watching this, like I said in the beginning, that you are a pro. You are in a way the authority on graded cards. Where did you first start grading cards? Was it sports? Was it where did this journey start for you?
Well, I've been collecting cards since I was a little kid, but I was in my low 20s, and I saw I don't know where I saw it, probably on eBay, probably online. I saw cards that were encapsulated, and it was so intriguing, and I started to investigate it, and then it just blew my mind that you could have cards worth $1 turn into $1,000 because of the grade, and then it gave me that satisfaction of knowing if I own a card that's worth $1 and I get it graded, that card will I can never get that card again and beat my graded card. Like I'm done. I don't need to go back and get that card again. I'm done with that card. It fits into the collection. It's the highest grade on the planet of that card. And that's kind of my goal behind all this. So in my low 20s, it just blew me away, the whole card grading industry. And that's when I got obsessed with it.
And was that with Marvel or with another brand of cards that you were in your 20s dealing with?
When I started in my 20s, it was Michael Jordan, and that turned into the second largest graded Michael Jordan collection in the world, which I've sold that now. But then not long after, I don't know how long, a year or two, I immediately started to think about my Marvel cards that I still had. And I was thinking, wouldn't that be cool to grade some Marvel cards? Because I'd never seen a Marvel card graded before, ever, in the early 2000s. And I'm sure there was. I just didn't see any. So I started to grade my personal collection like crazy. And just to get back a rare insert, like a 1992 Wolverine versus Sabretooth Battle Spectra Masterpiece card in gem mint condition. Are you serious? Like at the time in my low 20s to have that card, it was special. It upgrades your cards in my mind than what they were. It just upgrades them, not just monetarily speaking, but they're protected forever in a case. I mean, they can never be damaged. You can submit them under water and the water can't touch it. You can throw a Beckett slab on the concrete as hard as you can and the card won't be damaged. I'm not recommending that, but just so many things, right? Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things on my channel, I know this is the first podcast that we've done, but on my channel, I try to have a collector on who's very qualified to talk about the topic at hand. So I've had some collectors on to talk about their character who were very much associated with being the collector for that. Mm-hmm. And from what you've described, you are very qualified to have these opinions about grading because you've done it for years, but not only done it for years, if you were grading Marvel cards and you had never seen them before, that makes you one of the first to do it, correct?
I think so. Like we said, unless there's somebody out there that is just unknown that I didn't know about, but I think so. Yeah.
So I appreciate having you on to talk about this because there are people who, everybody today has an opinion about stuff, but I really appreciate talking to you about it because I trust this information because of the amount of experience behind it.
Well, I would feel really unqualified if I have not done everything we're talking about tens of thousands of times. There's no way I would be talking about it, but I'm just sharing my personal experience I've done forever, you know? So,
and we really appreciate you sharing it with us. Thank you so much.
It's fun to share. Yeah.
Let's go back to the question
one of one
with grading one-of-one sketches, printing plates.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on, because why we're going to talk about it is because with a pop report, there is of a one-of-one, it doesn't take a mathematician to decide that your pop report is going to be one, no matter what grade that receives.
Right.
A printing plate being a one-of-one, a red spectrum. So let's talk about that. I don't like that people grade one-of-ones. I'll put it out there right now. I think that I like the idea that people want their card encapsulated.
Sure.
Or getting it authenticated. I think that's very cool. What are your thoughts on, and I shouldn't have started with my opinion of it.
No, it's okay.
Question, but what are your thoughts about people grading one-of-ones?
Well, my opinion's very different from yours because I think you and I have different goals. And so we have different just like every other collector out there, so when it comes for me personally, when it comes to a one of one, I don't view any cards I own, whether they're one of one or they're worthless base cards, as being a part of my true collection unless I can put it on the registry. Okay. I'm
Okay. Thank you.
I am so motivated to put on the, I mean, there, real quick on the registry, if you put a card on the registry and let's say you have a set or a character collection on the registry and it says that you're 5% away from completing it, you're 95% there, right? And you add a card and or three cards and it bumps it up to 96, 97%. That is incredible to me. I mean, it's so satisfying. So, but also the one of one encapsulation. I've heard of people counterfeiting serial numbered one of ones.
Oh,
and so, yep, I've heard of that. I don't know if I've seen an image of it. I have heard of that. And so obviously if you get it graded, it's going to take away the worry of it being a counterfeit one of one. It makes it right.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That makes perfect sense.
And then this is so unlikely, but what if a kid gets loose in your house, or what if you have a fire and there's smoke and that ruins cards, or what if it's in a case, the odds skyrocket it's going to be preserved and protected versus just being in a top loader or a one touch or whatever, right?
I think that's a great answer. I think that all of that being on the registry.
Yeah.
See, because when I'm thinking, excuse me, when you're on the registry, that's the hobby within the hobby I was referring to. For me, I was just thinking of why would you be worried if your one of one got a 10? It's the only one.
Yeah.
But your answer makes a lot of sense.
Well, Braden, really thoughtful. I love what you just said, though. I am obsessed with getting all the Wolverine cards ever made in the world in gem and condition, but there are certain cards out there that it doesn't matter to me the grade, and a one of one is a perfect example of that. I could care less if I have a one of one that I want to get graded. Of course, I would love to have it in gem, but if it comes back a 6, I still look at it like, oh my God, this is an incredible one of one. I don't care that it got a 6. It's a one of one. It still goes in my registry. So
Great. This is fantastic information.
Good. Glad you like it, man. Seriously, I could talk about this all day. So we're
gonna cut you off at some point, but we're just gonna let you go. We're just gonna let you go as much as you want. What has been a disappointing part of grading for you? Like, have you were talking about pre-grading? Have you been way off on a card a couple of times and been like disappointed getting your stuff back?
Oh yeah. I don't know. I'm going to answer your question 2 different ways. The biggest disappointment I've ever had in this industry is dealing with, talking with people, trading when it comes to the thought process of that. I believe the masses think a PSA 10 is in better condition than a Beckett 9.5.
Yep.
That's been a challenge. And I'm working through it. I'm talking to friends. I'm getting the word out. And like I said, if you collect PSA, great. I want to help you build your collection. Cool. I just don't want collectors out there thinking that Beckett 9.5s are inferior to PSA 10s, because that's just not true at all.
Right.
And then the other thing in terms of me making mistakes and all that, absolutely. I think I'll probably run a 75 to 85% accuracy rating. And this is just me guessing over the years, just of what it comes back. And on YouTube, I actually, before I sent the cards off to get graded of those 96 boxes on all the YouTube videos, I actually said, okay, this is my prediction before the cards came back, right? These are the gems, these are the mints. So, but yeah, sometimes I'll miss things on the surface, or just flaws that I just miss. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for answering all of this stuff. This is I'm getting a lot out of this. I hope that the people watching are getting quite a bit out of this. I'm getting a full education on this right now, and I have more questions, and I keep getting more that pop into mind. So when people are watching this, if you do have more questions, feel free to shoot them down in the comments, and we'll try to follow up with you about getting you either a quick answer or a more in-depth one at a later date. So please feel free to add those to the bottom. And I'm kind of winding up here with questions for you. When you get these cards slabbed, it seems that they take up a bit more real estate. So these aren't landing in your traditional binder that so many people enjoy flipping through and storing them. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you're storing your slabbed cards?
I go a little overboard. I bought
a little.
I bought these, they're about this big, and I don't even know how many graded cards they hold, 30, 40, 50 cards. And the brand is MJ Roop. And I don't think they make them anymore, but I think they have thousands of them still if you Googled it, MJ Roop. It's a museum quality, archival, safe, acid-free, everything you'd ever want to put your cards in.
Yeah.
And I've got all mine in that. But when I started, I used just typical cardboard boxes that were meant for graded cards. So instead of our typical cardboard boxes we put raw cards in, they were a little bit taller, right? And I would just use that. But these boxes, I think there's a video of this on my channel when Justin with Spidey Hits did the Marvel Cribs tour of my house. That was so fun. That was great. He went upstairs. Great. Yeah, there's a picture of it upstairs of them. I forgot about that. Yep.
So I've got a couple more. So you don't miss having a binder for because as a kid, I can assume that since you opened a lot of cards, I'm assuming you had a binder as a kid and that was part of your collection.
Loved binders my entire childhood, my low 20s. But as the slabs started to come in, I was trying to think of a way that gave me the satisfaction of a binder, and I searched for it. And those MJ Root boxes, I mean, they're clean. I mean, you put them in alphabetical order. They do it for me. So,
right.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to talk about when you did your walk through your house, it was incredibly kind of you to open up your doors to not only to have Justin over there, but everybody got to look at what your setup was. And
I didn't know that. I don't mean to interrupt you. It's just funny. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. And he said that, oh, do you mind if I take some videos? Not at all. No big deal. But it worked out. It worked out great, but I didn't really know what to expect, but it worked out. I was happy with it.
Full camera crew shows up,
satellite
on the roof.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I don't know. I think my laundry room was in the video. I didn't have a chance to make the house presentable, but whatever.
I was when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is a very welcoming man. I'm like, if you came to my house, I would spend a week concerning myself about all the crazy items I have in my house. But I loved it. That was great. So around your house in that tour, and I can see behind you, there's a lot of card displays. Mm-hmm. Is this the art form that you enjoy the most? Is there another art form that you have in your house? Do you collect paintings, or is this how you display your stuff? Is this your thing?
Yeah. And one day the goal would be to have a room or something different. I'm going to have it displayed a little different, but for now I just picked my favorite cards and I got them displayed on the walls, as you can see. And then I just got that original art. I haven't posted yet. I don't know if you can see that Wolverine.
Oh, I'm having a little hard time seeing it. I have a very small screen. I'm really looking forward to seeing it though.
Yeah. So that was original art, and if I can ever get my hands on any '96 Wolverine masterpieces, original art, I'll do everything I can to get that right. So
I never see the Julie Bell and Boris work ever surface.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So we've talked about grading cards, and I know that the majority of the people who are watching this are comic people and card people. One of the most interesting things I've ever seen graded was a Super Nintendo Carnage game. And it was slabbed and labeled. I think it was CGC. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm pretty sure it was CGC. But do you grade anything else other than cards?
Figures. I am a big Wolverine. But I like to get them. I like to buy them graded, or I get them graded. So my goal is to have every Wolverine figure ever made in graded condition. So
I know that people are wondering, do you have Wolverine pajamas? No, I'm just kidding.
No.
So figures as well are a part of your collection. I didn't know that.
Yep.
So you're buying them already done. Have you ever submitted one to be graded, or no? You're always buying them completely already graded.
I've always bought them graded, but I've got 3 or 4 that I'm going to send off this year to get them graded for sure.
Okay. we've asked you all of our grading questions. Where is your collection going? Is there an end goal? Is there a natural stopping point? Why don't you, I know it's a big question and a lot of people don't think about what their main goal is in collecting. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about yours?
Well, about a week ago from today's date, from us sitting down to do this, I decided to list my entire personal collection on eBay for sale for 1.5 million because what motivated me was the thought of, okay, if I have 1.5, I can invest that in enough real estate because I sell real estate full time. That's my job. I sell real estate, and this is the hobby now and a business that I do, nights and weekends. But I just thought about, if I could sell for 1.5, I could literally retire off the real estate I would invest in that and then start over in the hobby and do something completely different. Like maybe only do all 2013 retro, maybe only do one of ones, just something crazy different. But I won't leave the hobby. I'll get back in it.
I did, of all the answers that I thought you were going to say, that was literally the very last one. So you would be willing to part with your entire collection and then start a different type of collection that's not Wolverine or whatever. You would be willing to do that.
Yeah, but only for 1.5, right? So, right. Yeah. If the money's right, sure. But the thing about it is I don't think about it. And so if that sits on eBay at 35 cents a month and it sits there for a year or two, I'm going to have the time of my life and keep doing what I'm doing. If it never sells, I don't have any near end goal in sight. I will do this for years and years to come. I have no reason to stop.
For yourself, you've sold an entire collection before. So like it might sound kind of outlandish, this idea of selling your entire collection, but correct me if I'm wrong here, but you have sold an entire Michael Jordan collection before.
Yeah, I don't like to talk about that, but no. My story is the same as everybody else's. Everybody had just about a card at one time, whether they were a kid or at some point, and they sold it like, God, I wish I would have had that. So I sold 90% of my Jordan collection in 2016. And I don't know, whatever it sold for, but it's worth millions, $4 to $6 million more than it was if I still had that now. Multiple millions. Yeah. So, yeah.
So being in the real estate game as well, I'm sure that you've seen properties come and go where the price fluctuates, and that's the life
part of it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, that is about going to wrap up my questions that I have for you today. Is there anything that you want to add to this podcast about grading?
If you are not on Instagram, I want to encourage you that you could really connect to the community and get on Instagram, find Graydon, find me. I'm Cool Cards. And I want y'all, whoever's watching this, I want you to know that it's incredible to be able to grow your collection with people that you become friends with and trade in a community. I mean, think about it. If you're looking for a card and you can post on Instagram, hey, I'm looking for this card, and you've got thousands of people that can potentially see that, you're typically going to get your card. And we kind of work together as a community to help each other. And so if you're into that type of stuff, I think, because I wasn't a part of it, I didn't really understand it or know the whole social media Instagram part of it. So if you do like grading and you like to grow your collection, I just want to encourage everyone to get on Instagram and YouTube and just get plugged in and talk to other collectors. You can message me personally, message Graydon. We like to help people any way that we can. Seriously. Yeah. Yeah.
And, Michael is great at response times, getting back to people. It is a funny thing where we're all the people in the Marvel hobby, for the most part, are of a similar age group. We grew up with the cards.
It's true.
And social media to us is our wives posting pictures of our families. And our generation seems to deal with social media in a very different way, where in the card hobby, social media is not about posting what you had for dinner and sending memes back and forth with your friends. It's it's a very constructive, very useful tool. It's focused.
Yeah,
so
it
a lot
is.
of people watching, like, this isn't social media in the sense of like who is the most popular. Right. This is a way of sharing your collection and growing it by having a network of people looking out for your best interests collecting.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's a really good point to close out on. Thank you so much, Michael, for giving us all of that knowledge. You just condensed 20 years of knowledge into a podcast for us. We really appreciate it.
I hope some people get a lot out of it. Seriously. Thanks for having me on again. It means a lot. Seriously.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you guys have more questions out there, which I'm sure you're going to, please drop them down in the comments. We're going to do our best to get back to you about them. Check us out on Instagram, Cool Cards, and you can look me up at Sabretooth PC if you want to see character collecting, and Last Pack Magic YT on Instagram for the channel. Thanks so much, Michael, for joining us, and we'll do this again sometime with another topic.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, buddy.
Mm-hmm.